Ladies and gentlemen, what's up? What's going on? Welcome back and happy Money Freaking Tuesday. Let's get with it, team. Let's get fired up. Let's get motivated. And let's have an amazing day in the market. Hit me with a big ol' Alpha Day Trading. Good morning right now if you guys are inside of chat. If you guys are ready to rock and roll. If you guys are ready to have an amazing day and lock in some amazing profits as well. You guys know the drill. Hit me with a big ol' good morning. And we'll officially dive into it here in a moment. Who's inside of chat with me? Who's ready to rock and roll? Who do we got? Joey, Anita, Mr. Perez, Steve, William, Trader Adam, Catherine's in the house. Anthony's ready to go. He's ready to get it, right? Day number 2, green, baby. Being patient, freaking love it. Again, everybody, good morning. Welcome back. Happy Money Tuesday. We're going to mess this market up in a good way. We're going to crush this market. We're going to make it happen, and we're going to have a good time while we do it. Chris, what's up? Susan, good morning. Zach's in the house as well. What's up, buddy? Good morning. All right, let's officially dive into it. Let's not waste any time, team, right? Again, the pre-market rundown. Come prepared with your top stocks for the day, and let's get those reviewed and make sure you guys are focused, dialed in, and ready to attack. All right, and then we'll dive into the morning game plan where I'm going to break down the SPY, take a deep dive into the SPY, the Qs, my top 2 option plays for today, and then dissect some of these small caps for you guys as well. All right, so let's dive into it. Let's not waste any time. Let's make it happen, and let's have some fun, baby. Let's go. And then over on the tube, good morning, Vito, Texas man, Harjeets. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning. Happy Tuesday. Just waiting for those first round of tickers, and we can dive into it, baby. Just waiting for the first round. That's it. I'm just going to sit back, stretch a little bit, put my feet up, drink my Celsius, and just wait patiently. There we go. There we go. All right, so Tesla. Well, would you look at that? Tesla's actually one of my top stocks for the day. Wow. So let's take a deep dive into Tesla. So what I basically did here this morning, guys, is I went back on Tesla and I just marked up yesterday's open and yesterday's close. It's such a tight range, right? We opened yesterday on Tesla at 251.45 and 251.45. We closed at 251.45. So, I mean, our open and our close was exactly the same price. So I just put a little line, a little box there to mark up yesterday's open and yesterday's close, right at the same price. So what I would personally like to see today on Tesla to get in would be one of two things. Number one, I'd like to see if Tesla could open, push on up into, again, yesterday's open and yesterday's close. That's going to be a pretty tough level of resistance. And you also have a lot of these post-market lows, right? We broke above that level and we were actually trying to hold it as support, there in post-market. So if Tesla can open, push on up into that level, right? Again, it's just yesterday's open, yesterday's close, and we top on out, this could be an area of resistance where we look to get short. All right. And so that would be, really game plan number one. If Tesla can open and push on up into resistance prior to dropping on off. But at the same time, I mean, Tesla could just open and then just start to drop, right? And if that happens, we got to wait and be patient. And so what I would have to sit back and wait for would be Tesla to start entering this daily gap zone, right? The same daily gap level that we've been looking at for the past 2 to 3 weeks as we were starting that initial drop off earnings saying, hey, we could definitely come on down and close this daily gap. And that daily gap's between 235.24 and 240.86. So if we don't push up into resistance to get that short up around that 251.50 and we just open and start to drop, I would personally want to sit back and wait to see if Tesla can drop below and enter this gap zone and then stay below that 240.86 level as intraday resistance. And so if we actually see that intraday crack and retest and we enter that daily gap zone, that's an area where I would look to get short on down to close that daily gap at 235.24. So if we do just initially drop on off and start fading and falling, I'm going to have to be very, very patient to wait and see if Tesla can set up and give me a daily gap fill trade. But ideally, I would love to see Tesla push at the start of the day into resistance and then look to get short up here in the 250s and then ride this bad boy down for the same game plan to see if we could eventually close that daily gap to the downside right around 235.24. So it really depends on how Tesla opens and where it starts to go, right? If it opens and pushes higher, looking for some puts off that upper level of resistance for that drop on off today. All right. If we just open and start to drop, got to be very, very patient to wait for a proper setup at that daily gap level and then look to take a trade at that point in time. If Tesla is able, right, to actually break above and hold above yesterday's, open and yesterday's close, and we see that 250-50 level turning support, I still probably wouldn't trade it long just because there's limited opportunity to the upside, right? It's like, even if we break and hold that level, 250-50 as support, and we don't actually see Tesla reject off that level, there's still not that much opportunity to the upside, in my opinion. So I would probably still pass on a long, right? You'd have room into these lows, which is right around like 253.12. So it's pretty limited upside. I mean, it's not terrible. It's still about $1.50, maybe 2 points to the upside. But again, it's on something like Tesla, it's like we're looking for 3-4 points, and that's easy to get, a few points on Tesla. So again, with that being said, I wouldn't look to take Tesla long into that 253. I would just sit back and wait and see what we do at 253, and maybe that 253 level, a lot of this prior support, gives us an opportunity to take puts if we are able to break that 250-50 level. Okay, and just remember that 250, it's actually 251.50. Right? Obviously, I'm out of it today. Keep saying 250-50. It's 251.50. Right? Again, that level is just yesterday's open and yesterday's close at 251.50. That's our main level of resistance. That's the line in the sand. If we can't break it, I want to start taking some puts today on Tesla. Yeah, everybody's looking at Tesla. Tesla. And we absolutely nailed Tesla yesterday. I know Anita came in, heard the game plan, got prepared herself, started off the day strong with like $300 in profit on Tesla. So just absolutely dialed in with these levels. And then again, just sitting back, waiting for the market to come to you and providing you with opportunity. And that's what it really comes down to. There's a couple of different things Tesla could do. It just comes down to sitting back, being patient, remaining disciplined, and waiting for the stock to set up at one of your levels. And that's it. But we definitely have some good potential today with Tesla. So it's definitely one of our top two. Walmart. Let's go take a look at Walmart, WMT. So we've actually had this zone marked up for quite some time on Walmart. We have a lot of this resistance up between this 160.34 and 160.50. And as I was sitting here, like hitting this level of resistance a couple of weeks back, I told you guys, like, I wouldn't look to get long on Walmart until we actually see the day where we open higher than the zone, right? There's a lot of resistance here on Walmart, right? Between 160.35 and 160.50. And I was explaining that I would not think about getting long on WMT, Walmart, until we actually see a gap up over this zone of resistance. And if we can open above that zone, right, we could see that initial drop back into it, see a nice bounce off that level of support, and then we would have a good trade for that possible rip and run. So where is Walmart this morning? Right? We could be opening above that zone. It's very possible. We'll keep it on watch. We were above it yesterday, but we actually closed back below it yesterday or right inside of it. So, I mean, it really depends on how we open at the start of the day and try and gain some clarity. But I don't know if it's going to gap up high enough to really make it worth it. So let's just keep it on watch. But if we do, for some reason, see Walmart, right, open at, let's say, 160.80, okay, that's technically opening above that zone of resistance on the daily. And then at that point in time, we would just want to see Walmart sell off at the start of the day, back into that zone of daily resistance and hold as intraday support and see a bounce. And then we may see a nice strong bounce, flip green on the day, and then start the rip to the upside because we have a lot of potential to open on up and really start to move to the upside. So I would not get long on Walmart until we actually see that first day where we open above this zone of daily resistance. Watch Walmart come back down into that zone, hold as intraday support, and bounce. The day that we see that is the day I consider getting long on Walmart for that push to the upside. But as we're coming up into the zone of resistance, we see there's a lot of sellers present, holding it down, 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 right? We tried to break through it yesterday, but again, seller said, not today, right back down into that zone. Really depends on how we open the day. Do we have an opportunity to trade this to the long side? We'll see, but definitely let's keep it on watch for sure. Let's go ahead and add this to the watch list. Let's bring it up towards the top. And here in about, again, 5-10 minutes after the market opens, let's see what Walmart's doing. Let's see if today's the day where we can actually see that nice push to the upside, right? If we actually open in this zone, right, and we feel the push and hold it, you'd actually want to look for puts today, right? Example, if you open right here and you can't push and you start to roll on over out of the gate, you could actually look for a possible short today because, hey, the odds are this is a lot of resistance. We've seen it hit several times as resistance, right? We're not opening above that level to where we can come down into it as support for the push, right? That's not going to happen. So, hey, we open inside of this zone. We can't hold it and break to the upside. This is a great area to get short for a nice little drop. Very similar to what you saw right here, right? Right here, where you come up into that zone, you can't break through it, and you have a nice big drop, nice big drop, nice big drop. So again, if we open underneath this zone, push into it, feel the break higher, that's a great idea to take the short back to yesterday's low of day, right? Even if we open inside of it, but we still fail to push to the upside, and we clearly see like sellers are still in control, still a great opportunity to look for a short back down to yesterday's low of day here on Walmart. And like I said, the only time that I would consider getting long, we open above that zone, come down into it intraday, see it hold as intraday support. That's when I consider the long, when we see that day where we actually open above that zone. Hopefully that makes a lot of sense. You can definitely look for a long today if we open higher. But again, if we open at that zone or below, I'd be looking for some puts today. And again, we'll just have to see how we open. Because again, we have maybe 32 minutes until the market opens. I mean, hey, we could open at 161.50. That could be the first print, the first candle, right? The first order that goes through. We could open higher. We could pull back. It really depends. So I would say wait about 5 minutes. Let's come back and take a look at it after the market opens. All right. So let's take a quick little dive into Apple, right? So again, I want to hit on the SPY and the Qs real quick. SPY looking pretty weak today. At this point in time, we'll take a deep dive into the SPY, give you guys the breakdown, but the SPY's looking pretty weak. I still see room to the downside. Take a look at the Qs. Qs looking pretty weak as well. There is a lot of room to the downside, right? The SPY, we have this daily gap that could be getting filled coming on up. QQQ. We have this daily gap that could be getting filled coming on up. So if we see the SPY dropping more today, we see the Qs dropping more today, coming down to fill these daily gaps, okay? Tesla is probably going to follow suit, drop on off, come down, right? Close the daily gap. Apple, right? Probably follow suit with the overall market, fade and fall, drop on off as well. Apple actually has a daily gap that could get filled. So we can actually look to take a short into this daily gap fill here on Apple, right? And if we ever see this daily gap getting filled intraday, we could look for an intraday daily gap fill bounce strategy and then try and catch a bounce here on Apple at a very high probability level, right? If we come down and close this gap and we see intraday that this gap level is holding as support and we start to see a bounce, that could be the area where we stop falling and we actually see that bounce that we're most likely going to see. When you see a stock gap down and dump after earnings, at some point, you're going to get that first green day. You're going to get that bounce. And every trader tries to catch the bounce. They try to catch falling knives, right? You're going to screw yourself more times and you're going to lose a lot more than you win trying to catch a falling knife. But when you can actually look at the daily chart and say, hey, this is a pretty high probability area right here on Apple, this daily gap fill. And so if we come down and close this daily gap, and then we actually see intraday how we're coming down and putting in, say, like nice structure, and we're actually getting a solid bounce, that could be some great indication that this is going to be the area where we actually start to bounce for that green day that we're most likely going to see, right? So with that being said, we're not just blindly trying to catch a falling knife here on, Apple. It would be a high probability area of support that could hold on up and then be that nice big bounce if we're trying to look for a dip buy or a bounce play, again, here on Apple. So again, if the SPY's kind of rolling on over at the start of the day, if the Qs and the broader market and everything's really just rolling on over and we see a lot of this momentum continue to pull the market down, I'm actually looking to possibly get short on Apple to close that daily gap. So let me remove a few things real quick. So like I said, if everything's rolling on over and we have another weak day, right, I would look to see if Apple could come down and crack below yesterday's low of day. Yesterday's low of day on Apple is 177.35. So at any point today, right, SPY's fading and falling, the Qs, everything's red, all this momentum bleeding into today, Apple's most likely going to fade and fall as well. At any point today, we see Apple cracking below yesterday's low of day, coming back up for a retest, and we stay below yesterday's low of day, I would actually look to get short on Apple down to 176.57, and then look and see if Apple could enter that daily gap zone and actually come down and close the gap down at 175.79. So even if we were to get short somewhere around this 177.35, we can see that there's maybe $1.50 to $2 of reward to the downside here on Apple to come down and close that daily gap. So that's what I'm expecting here on Apple. At some point, see Apple come down, close this daily gap before it bounces. And we know that we're going to see a green day at some point. That could be today, tomorrow, but we know at some point we're going to see a bounce. I mean, look at Tesla. Okay, Tesla, earnings, massive dump. Day number 2, dropped even further. Day number 3, come down into support. We have that big, much needed bounce, and we can expect that bounce. But a lot of traders try and catch, those bounces, and they're trying to catch it as the stock's dumping at very random locations, right? They're trying to catch a falling knife, right? They want to try and catch the absolute low and capitalize on this bounce, but they're trying to catch it here, trying to catch it here, trying to catch it here, trying to catch it here with no real reason as to why they're getting in. Okay. When we take a deep dive and take a closer look into Apple, we come down and close that daily gap. We know we can see what we call a gap fill bounce strategy. So we could be looking to get long if we close this daily gap down around that 175.79 level and play this long for a daily gap fill bounce. And then, hey, if we see a big bounce and we get some great follow through, that could turn into that first green day and that nice big bounce that we could be expecting. Very similar idea to what we had on Tesla. After earnings, drop, come down into support, right? Nice big green day, nice big bounce. We close that daily gap here on Apple. We have a nice intraday bounce and we see it follow through. That could be that nice big bounce, that nice big green day. So that would be trade idea number 2 on Apple, right? Obviously, I want to try and get short on this on down to close that daily gap. But if and when we close that daily gap and we actually see a bounce, hey, I would actually look to take that long, right? For that nice bounce on back up. So definitely want to be watching Apple today. Again, looking to get short below yesterday's low of day, down to close this daily gap, right? That gap closes down at 175.79 there on Apple, okay? We already know the game plan here on Tesla as well. And then I do want to talk about Datadog very quickly, right? DDOG is currently down a lot off earnings, right? The stock yesterday closed at 106. We hit a low of $80 here in pre-market. So that's down about 26 points here in pre-market. That's a big drop on off. And I expect to see it drop on off at the start of the day as well. I expect to see an initial pullback right when the market opens. Those are my expectations. And so let's say we open right here at $86. Let's say that's where we open, is at $86. We have a gap that could get filled here on DDOG, right? So if we open at, say, $86 and we come down intraday and actually see this gap get closed down at $79.59, I would look for a daily gap fill bounce, right? It's a strategy where we actually come down, close a daily gap, and then we see a daily gap fill bounce. So at any point in time, if we see DDOG, right, coming down to the 79.59 level and we see an intraday bounce, we know that it's closing the daily gap. This is a daily gap fill bounce strategy. We could be looking to get long off this bounce back up to 82.41. So there's great potential here, right? There's about $3 of potential upside for a daily gap fill bounce strategy. So It is a back burner, right? Tesla looks a lot better. Apple looks a lot better. The SPY and the Qs look fantastic. We have penny stocks ripping and running this morning as well. So DDOG is a back burner. It's a stretch. It may not come down and close that daily gap. But at any point in time today, you guys see it coming down close to 79.59. Hey, we know that we could see that level hit, see a nice intraday bounce, and then catch this for that daily gap fill bounce strategy back up to this 82.41 level. So definitely keep this one on watch. All right, here on DDO to the G, right? DDOG. Right. So again, you guys know my game plan with Datadog, DDOG, what I'm expecting, what I would like to see to get in, and what the strategy is, right? Apple, same thing. You know what to expect, what we're looking for, and then Tesla as well. Okay. And then we did kind of hit on the SPY just a little bit, but let's hit on it once again. Okay. Couple key levels that I'm looking at. And my key levels are basically yesterday's low of day and yesterday's open. That's it. So what I did here this morning is I came in and I marked up yesterday's low of day, 448, and I marked up yesterday's open, 448.70. These are going to be our two main levels of resistance here today. All right. So these are our two main levels of resistance. What's going to be our main level of support? It's actually going to be Friday's lower levels. So it's going to be Friday's low of day and Friday's close. Okay. That's going to be between 446.29 and up to Friday's close, which is 446.80. That's going to be our zone of support, and pretty good support. Okay. So it really comes down to these three levels: our lower range of support and our two upper levels of resistance, right? We need to crack support before we can see a next big move. We need to break through all of this resistance before we can see that next big move to the upside. So it really just comes down again to these upper two levels of resistance and this zone of support. Okay. So if we open on up and we come into the zone of support and hold, right, we can definitely look to play the market long back into these levels of resistance. And if we break through these levels of resistance today, there is potential to see the SPY get back up towards around 450.50 here on the SPY, right? So if we hold that support level and we fail to push lower today, we simply want to be looking to play the market long into these upper levels of resistance. First upper level of resistance is 448. Second upper level of resistance is 448.70. If we're able to break through those two levels of resistance, that shows a lot of strength. And we could see the SPY back up to 450 and then back up to this zone of resistance. And it's actually right around 450.70 to 450.87. So that little blue box that you guys see, that's going to be your upper level of resistance here on the SPY. Okay. But let's say we open on up, right? And we fail to break these upper levels of resistance. And eventually we start falling below this zone of support and we see it turn resistance. Hey, fantastic. We can see this momentum bleed into today. We can see another drop and another leg on down. And I really want to see the market drop today. Makes a lot of sense, right? Because we have this daily gap to get filled here on the SPY. So I would love to see the market set up for a great short because there's so much potential to the downside and we can fall possibly 4 to 5 points today versus having maybe 2 points of upside potential. We got about 4 to 5 points of downside potential. So obviously, I would like to see the market set up short, but that doesn't mean I'm biased to the short side. If the market wants to set up long, let's play it long. But again, I would prefer to see it set up to the short side because again, we start cracking below this level of support between 446.29 and 446.80, and we fail to hold that level and we fail to get back above it, and we see that it's now going to be resistance, I'm going to start looking to get short on the SPY down to 445. And 445 is that gap up low of day. Let's actually readjust that level, and let me give you the exact level, right? It's actually 444.91, right? That was the gap up low of day. Okay, that's where the gap's going to start. Okay, so that's going to be our first area of support. That's going to be an area that we think about taking some profits because we could come down below this initial zone of support, stay below it, and let's say we're getting puts. Where to? That 444.91. That was the gap up low of day. That's going to be an area where we can see the SPY bounce and hold on up as support. So that's going to have to be a profit-taking level. But I would like to see at some point if the SPY can break below that 444.91 level and officially enter that daily gap zone. That would be fantastic because then looking at the daily, right, where do we have room to drop down to? the high of day prior to the gap up, and the high of day, right, prior to this gap up was at 443. So if we can crack below that 444.91 level and stay below that level as intraday resistance, we could drop on down to 443. There's a lot of potential to the downside. Like I said, 4 to 5 points of potential to the downside today if the SPY is going to continue to fade and fall. If we're going to continue to see a lot of this momentum carry on and follow through into today and see the next leg down, all the way down to close that daily gap towards around 443. Right. So that's, again, the main levels that I'm looking at today here on the SPY, guys. Right. What it really comes down to is our 3 key levels, this key level of support and these 2 key upper levels of resistance. It really depends on what the market does at these levels. If we break and hold resistance, we play the market long. Right. If we come up in the resistance, we can't break it, we start thinking about playing the market short. Right. We come down into the zone of support and we hold it, we play the market long into these upper levels of resistance. Okay, if we come on down and can't hold support and we fail to hold it and crack below it, guess what? We play the market short. So like I said, it just comes down to sitting back, being patient, being super disciplined, and then waiting for the market to come to one of these levels and then provide you with a setup, provide you with an opportunity, and give you a reason to take a trade. But we already know where the highest probability setups are going to take place, right? At one of these levels. We just got to wait for one of those levels to be hit, wait for there to be a setup, and then go from there, right? Are we going to take the market long at that point in time? Or are we going to take the market short? Who knows? But when the setup starts to develop, when the opportunity presents itself, we'll know. Those are going to be your main levels. We know we have a gap that could get filled today, but we also know if we hold support and break through all of this resistance, we could definitely see the SPY back up towards around that 450.70 today, right? And those are going to be your main levels that you guys need to be focused on for today, all right? Let's go ahead and talk about these penny stocks real quick. And then if we have a couple of minutes, what we'll go ahead and do is see if there's any other stocks that you guys need reviewed and make sure we get those reviewed before the market opens. All right, so we got VVOS. All right, so VVOS right now at this point in time and hold above. Let me readjust this real quick. If VVOS can hold above this 46 cent to 48 cent support level, we could see a nice push back up into these highs right around 75 cents, right? So if VVOS opens on up, comes on down into the zone of support, it's all of this resistance from post-market, pre-market resistance. We broke that level, pulled back. We retested that level as support before that next leg on up. So we can clearly see prior resistance, prior support. If we can pull back into the zone and hold once again as support, we could see VVOS have a nice move on up back into these pre-market highs of 75 cents, guys. Okay. Not only, right, is this a prior level of resistance and support, it's also a hiccup candle lower shadow. Okay. We know that hiccup candle lower shadows are great levels of support, and we look for dip buys off those levels, right? So not only can we see resistance, break and retest as support for the rip, it's also a hiccup candle. It's the hiccup candle lower shadow, and that's a very high probability level for dip buys, right? It's a great support level. So this is a very valid level and a very strong level, in my opinion, to see VVOS hold above today. And if we can hold above this level, again, it's between 46 cents and 48 cents, and we see that level hold and we get a nice bounce, hey, buyers could absolutely move right back in, and we could see a nice spike up towards around 75 cents here on VVOS. At any point in time today, we see a break over 75 cents, right? We have room up towards around $1, all right? MF, the mother trucker, MF looking decent, right? We are coming back down into this lower level of support here on MF, and that lower level of support's between like 164 and 170. And then we got this massive downtrend from pre-market yesterday, right? We came up and hit it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. Like, we've just been smacking this downtrend since pre-market yesterday. What are we starting to see here, right? We're starting to bottom on out, right? We are bottoming well above this main level of support, but it's still a decent little level of support here, right? We can see that we had a lot of touch points here on Friday, right? We bounced at 186. We bounced at 186. We held 186 beautifully. We held 186 here in post market. We're holding 186 here in pre market. So, yeah, it didn't come down to my lower level of support, but what we can see is 186 is still a pretty key, pretty valid level of support that we've hit many, many, many times. So, we come down into support. We bounced several times in pre market. Now we're starting to break this downtrend. And what are we starting to see here with MF? We're breaking this downtrend and we're actually pulling back and we're holding that downtrend as support. This retest of the downtrend may be our higher low, right? We've been putting in lower highs and lower lows, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, right? Lower high. Maybe this starts to become a higher low before we actually see that higher high come in and we've officially reversed from downtrend to uptrend, right? So again, this could be a break and retest of this downtrend, which would also create a higher low that may bring buyers back into this play. So I want to keep this one on watch because we are bouncing off support. We are breaking this downtrend. We could see a reversal in this downtrend and start to see it reverse into that possible uptrend and see a nice spike. Where to? Back up towards around 242 here on MF. So we would have some potential back up towards around that 242 level. And then if we ever break over 242, we can see we would just target some of yesterday's highs, right? $3, 326, and then maybe back up the towards around these pre-market highs from yesterday at like 382. So I do like MF because we've come down into some pretty good support. We are breaking this downtrend. We could start to see that higher low move on in. And so if we see that take place, we could look to take this long for a quick spike up to 242. And then we know we have some great potential all the way back up towards around 382 on here on MF, right? So I would definitely keep MF on high watch today as well. And then you got DRUG, right? I'm like 50-50 with DRUG, right? Good news, positive phase one results, nice big spike from around, 367 all the way up to nearly $8, but it's lost a lot of the volume after that big rip and run. So I'm like 50-50 with DRUG right now at this point in time. I would say if DRUG can stay above, I want to bring this level down just a little bit because I feel like we connect a lot better right around like 436. Support, resistance, a lot of resistance here at, like 436. So I would just keep it on watch above 436. I'm not saying I would take a trade off 436 or I would look for a dip buy at 436. I would just watch it and see if it comes down to 436 and see if we put in a decent bottom today. If we have a decent bounce, whatever the case is, like let it come on down towards around this daily support level of 436 and let's see if it holds on up. And if we see this level hold on up at support intraday, hey, we have some room back up towards around $6. So there's still a lot of great potential here on DRUG. But right now we had that big spike on up. We came right back down. We've been sitting sideways, consolidating, losing a lot of volume. I'm like 50-50 with it. Unless it opens, comes down to 436, and has a really good, strong bounce, then I may be interested. But right now, I would have to be on my hands, wait for it to come back down towards around 436 before even considering getting involved here with DRUG. So let's back burner DRUG at this point in time. I still think it's something worth watching, but I'm going to back burner it just to make sure we can open, come down, hold that support level, and then we can go from there. All right, and then we got BURU as well. Last one is going to be BUR to the U. All right. Let's go ahead and dissect this bad boy. Make sure you guys are all set, ready to rock. I mean, that daily chart is pretty messy daily chart. It's really hard to gauge like some super solid levels. I mean, the first area that I'm seeing is this low of day and this high of day. So we're going to mark up those two levels here, the high day and that low day. That gives us about a 4 cent window of support or resistance. I don't know where the stock's at right now in pre-market, like if we're underneath this zone or if we're above that zone, but we know that that's going to be an area of possible support resistance. And then look left, we know that this spiking high right here, right? These points, you got low day, high day, high day before that massive dump. That's going to be a pretty key level as well, right around like 211. And then we're going to come up into some of these daily lows. Daily low, high a day. So right around like 250. Let's take a look at this intraday chart. All right. So, yeah, we've already come up to that 211 level. We've hit it several times, right? That 211 level, 212 was identified right here on the daily. And we can see that it's a lot of resistance right now at this point in time. So, we know that if we want to get long on BURU, we need to see a nice break and hold above 212. We get a nice break and retest above 212. Hey, you could look to take that long up towards around that 252 level. So there's still about 40 cents of potential here with BURU. If we're able to break and hold, 212. Again, you could look to take that long into your next level of resistance, which is going to be 252 here on BURU. Or it fails to break resistance and then it pulls back into that lower level of support between 135 and 143. So if we fail to break this resistance and you don't get your long for that break and retest and you just start dropping on off, you could see BURU fade all the way back down towards around 135 to 143. That would be the next best area to be watching for a bounce, to be watching for a dip buy here on BURU, right? If we can open and just dump straight down into that level, you can catch it for a quick scalp for a dip buy. And again, maybe get 10, 20, 30 cents out of it. So BURU, it's got to break and hold 212 before you guys can confidently get long on that trade up towards around 252, or wait for it to fade and fall on down into that lower level of support and then look for a possible long at that point in time. While we're just kind of sitting here under resistance, you're not touching it. All right, you're not going to touch it. If you're getting in right here thinking it could break and it just dumps on you, you're going to be pretty upset. Let the stock break, let it prove that it's going to break, and then let it set up properly on a nice little break and retest, and then you guys could look to take that long and grab about 40 cents out of it there with BURU. But again, right now, you are not touching it as it's just sitting right at resistance. The last thing you want to do is get in, be in on a false breakout, and then you get caught up in some kind of like massive rug pull. So sit back on your hands. Sit back on your hands with BURU until either A, it comes down into support and bounces, or B, it breaks and holds 212. Then, like I said, you can confidently get long up towards around that 252 level. Okay. And then other than that, the other stocks that we're going to talk about are more like day trades that can turn into swing trades. So we talked a lot about AMC the last couple of days, and yesterday we hit it on the head, right? AMC is setting up in this daily moving average squeeze, right? Getting squeezed between its 20 EMA and its 200 SMA. And we have earnings dropping as well. And we said this yesterday. We have a great daily setup, and earnings could be the catalyst to get this stock to break out of this moving average squeeze for that swing trade, for that next leg up. So what did we have? A pretty decent close yesterday. We had AMC drop earnings. What's AMC doing right now? It's gapping up. It's starting to move. It's getting eyeballs and attention. What's it breaking? It's starting to break that 200 SMA. So right now at this point in time, AMC, if we open right where we're at 546, we're going to be gapping up over the 200 SMA today. That's going to start to validate a squeeze, right? Because we're going to actually be opening above the 200 SMA after it's been squeezing for the past 2 weeks. And earnings was the catalyst to get this stock up over its 200 SMA. So if we can see AMC open above the 200 SMA, sell off at the start of the day, and not sell off $1 or $2, but come down, pull back like 10 to 15 cents into the 200 SMA, and we see the 200 SMA hold as support, and we see an intraday bounce, I'm getting long AMC for the swing trade, right? It's a daily moving average squeeze, and today could be the day that we get confirmation to take this long for the moving average squeeze. If you guys are like, what's a moving average squeeze, Josh? Hey, Carvana, moving average squeeze, okay? What happened? We were in the squeeze. We opened above the 200 SMA. We held the 200 SMA that day. We had a strong close, validating we are starting to squeeze. We got long. 1580 was the cost basis. Consolidated sideways, held up well, exploded to the upside. Great moving average squeeze swing trade here on CVNA back in May. We made a lot of money on that, right? It's the same setup that we're seeing on AMC, right? Moving average squeeze. Today, looks like we're going to be opening above the 200 SMA. If we hold the 200 SMA, we have a green close. That's going to validate we've just squeezed. So towards the end of the day today, right, we're going to know where we're closing. If we look at AMC at 355, okay, and we're green and we're up at like 560, for example, and we see that we're going to have a strong daily close to get confirmation on the trade, we can look to get in for the swing trade later tonight before market closes. That's exactly what we did with Carvana, right? The day that it gapped up, we were just waiting to see how it was closing. Towards the end of the day, we noticed it's going to be a strong green close. It's going to validate this moving average squeeze. I'm getting in. Same thing with AMC, right? We're going to be opening above the 200 SMA. Let's wait until the end of the day to see how AMC closes. If it closes red back below the 200 SMA, there's no reason to be in it. But if we start to notice we're going to be closing possibly green and strong towards the end of the day, and we're starting to see, hey, that's going to be a valid moving average squeeze setup, we could look to get in for that swing trade towards the end of the day, unless it gives us a solid reason to get in during the day for a possible day trade. And that's why I want to hit that on the head. I said day trade, but possible swing trade, a day trade that could turn into a swing trade. So at any point in time, we see AMC set up for a solid day trade to the long side, we can get in with the expectations to day trade that and lock in profits. But if we have a great close towards the end of the day and you're already in on that day trade, right, that day trade could turn into a swing trade. So make sure you're getting positioned correctly. Don't trade Friday's expirations if you think that that day trade could turn into a swing trade. You want to make sure you're positioned ahead of time and already be looking 30 to 45 days out on those contracts if you're going to trade calls. Or you can just trade shares. It's a $5 stock. It's pretty cheap. So keep AMC on high watch. It's setting up beautifully the same way that Carvana set up for the moving average squeeze. And like we said yesterday, earnings could be the catalyst that gets this thing going. And right now it looks like earnings is that catalyst to get this above that 200 SMA. And depending on how we close on out towards the end of the day, I want to be looking to get in on AMC for a nice swing trade, right? These are great, great, great setups. And another one that we're seeing is MNK, another stock we've had on watch for the past week. We talked about this yesterday. I said it's not the best looking one because we actually have the 50 SMA curling on down, not necessarily curling on up. So it's not the best looking one. But if we actually see a strong close today and we start to see confirmation that we've squeezed, we want to be looking to get long. What did we see with MNK yesterday? Yesterday, we actually gapped up. We had a solid green day, right, with high volume. So we see the gap up. We see a nice green day. We see volume starting to move on back in, right? We saw a nice spike in volume yesterday. We actually confirmed this moving average squeeze, right? Getting squeezed between the 50 SMA and the 20 EMA, getting tight, 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 right into the tip with little to no volume, gap up out of the squeeze, nice push, nice increase in volume. Yesterday's candle confirmed the daily moving average squeeze. So I want to be looking to get long today on MNK. And how do I want to look to play MNK to the long side? I just want to look for a daily continuation to the long side. So that's going to be breaking and holding yesterday's high a day. So at any point in time today that we see MNK breaking and holding 193, I want to get long, right? What's our target to be? The target here on MNK is going to be this daily gap fill, right? So we actually have this daily gap fill that starts at $2 that goes all the way up to 243. So I'm looking for an intraday break and retest over 193 to get long, up for a daily gap fill at 244. So it's really nice. We got a nice confirmed moving average squeeze, great confirmation yesterday. We can see that second day of continuation today. That's basically just getting a break and hold over 193. And if we see that take place, I want to get long the 244 for that daily gap fill here on MNK, guys. Okay. So there's a lot of stocks setting up. There's a lot of opportunity, right? We got great action today, great potential with the SPY. We got great potential with the Qs, right? We have a lot of great potential with Tesla, Apple, and then Datadog as well. And then we have penny stocks moving well, moving nice, setting up, providing us with opportunity. You got VVOS, you got MF, you got DRUG, and then BURU, and then some of these potential swing trades, right? You have AMC, possible swing trade, CVNA, possible swing trade, and then MNK, possible swing trade as well coming on up. So you got a big watch list today, but a lot of these stocks looking absolutely fantastic. So we're going to keep our eyes peeled on everything, make sure we don't miss opportunities, and just freaking rock and make it happen. So let's have an amazing day. Let's crush it. And let's have some fun. Let's take amazing trades and let's make some money as well. Let's get to it, team. Let's rock. Let's roll. All right, guys, and the Zoom link for everybody inside Market Mastery, Zoom link has been posted, so you guys are all set, ready to rock. Should be automatically posted every single morning, but for some reason it has not been hasn't been showing up lately. So went ahead and got that up, so you guys are all set. We are good to go. Yeah, you guys were ready and on top of it. You weren't wasting any time. Like, let's get to it. Let's get serious. Time to make some money, baby.